China pushes global convergence on DER standards. China's distributed energy pilots highlight missing national standards. Their rapid scaling could accelerate convergence between IEEE and IEEE 61A50, reshaping how utilities and OEMs worldwide design and procure systems. The standards at a glance: a 2030.5 Smart Energy Profile. Developed in the US, this standard is widely used for DR to utility communications. It enables smart inverters, rooftop solar, energy storage, and demand response systems to exchange data with grid operators, especially in markets shaped by FERC rules. IEC 61850, originating from the International Electrotechnical Commission, this standard dominates global utility automation, particularly in substations. It defines communication protocols for grid protection and control and has been expanding into DER management. IEC 61850 is already embedded in much of Europe's transmission and distribution infrastructure. While historically deployed in different contexts, both standards increasingly rely on shared information models, a key point of overlap that makes convergence possible. China's national pilots could accelerate this process by proving which models scale effectively in practice. China as the testbed for interoperability. China's ambitious distributed energy resource (DR) programs, spanning rooftop solar, smart inverters, EV charging, and demand response, are being deployed without a unified national protocol. The report on integrating distributed energy resources in China underscores the gap. Technical standards remain fragmented, and DER operators face high entry thresholds due to missing communication frameworks. To close the gap, Chinese regulators have pushed a wave of pilots for virtual power plants and vehicle-to-grid (V2G) systems. These pilots are designed not only to test aggregation and dispatch, but to evaluate data models, cybersecurity, and settlement mechanisms at scale. That makes China, by default, a global testbed for DER interoperability. Business stakes, procurement, and supply chains. For manufacturers and aggregators, the commercial implications are significant. OEMs may have to ship equipment with dual compatibility, adding cost but expanding market access. Aggregators and utilities gain flexibility but face higher certification and compliance requirements, particularly if China's outcomes influence future ISO, IEC test suites. Procurement teams will need to weigh the risk of vendor lock-in versus the efficiency of aligning with what becomes the de facto Chinese standard. This isn't theoretical. China previously shaped hardware baselines with its GBT DC fast charging standard, which later evolved into Chao-G and influenced global connector discussions. A similar trajectory is possible for DR protocols. Global response. How other regions respond will determine whether China's standard set remains localized or becomes globally influential. European Union. Regulators are likely to integrate lessons but protect European data sovereignty and cybersecurity layers. Flexibility markets are already central to EU policy, but a lack of harmonized appliance-level data standards has slowed progress. China's pilots could provide proof points the EU adapts, but within a European compliance framework. United States, FERC Orders 841 and 2222 continue to drive DR aggregation into wholesale markets, while U.S. regulators will likely retain IEEE 2030.5 as the foundation. They may accommodate crosswalks with 61850 information models if equipment imports demand it. Emerging markets, countries in Southeast Asia, Africa, and Latin America may adopt turnkey Chinese DR systems, bundled with financing, making China's stack the default in regions where cost efficiency trumps long-term interoperability concerns. Geopolitics and energy security. The standards debate is not just technical, it is geopolitical. Interoperability directly affects grid resilience, data governance, and supply chain control. For Beijing, standardizing DER integration is framed as a way to secure stable electricity under AI-era demand pressures. For the US and EU, adopting interoperable outcomes without becoming dependent on Chinese platforms will be the balancing act. That tension echoes past episodes in telecom and EV charging, where China's rapid scaling forced global suppliers to adapt. This time, the stakes extend to how distributed energy interacts with carbon markets, demand response baselines, and real-time grid operations. Future outlook. For businesses, the question is no longer whether to follow China's experiments, but how to position supply chains around them. If Chinese pilots establish reliable, cost effective interoperability frameworks, global procurement specs may evolve to demand dual stack or standard certified devices. That would affect utilities, equipment manufacturers, and even large corporates procuring on site renewables. China's distributed energy pilots are more than a domestic grid initiative. They are shaping the trajectory of DR interoperability worldwide. If IEEE 2030.5 and IEC 61850 converge in practice under China's massive testbed, companies everywhere will face new procurement realities, and regulators will confront fresh geopolitical choices about which standards define the next phase of the energy transition. You've been listening to Sustainability Soundbites presented by E+E Leader. For partnership opportunities, reach out to a member of our team.